I think generally speaking, when we think about why associations exist, in many ways it is, one, to accomplish the things that people can't do on their own, and two, to establish a community and a network of like-minded professionals that can support one another to do their job better. And I think that is really a core responsibility for NASP, I think for any organization. I'll pull from a quote from my grandmother. I don't know if she came up with this quote, but she said, "Pain shared is halved, and joy shared is doubled."
This is Associations Thrive, the podcast celebrating successful associations and their leaders. I'm your host, Joanna Pineda, CEO and Chief Troublemaker at Matrix Group International. Listen in as top association executives tell all, revealing the creative and innovative ways they're increasing membership, generating revenue, nurturing engagement, and reimagining their organizations. By the way, if you've launched a new initiative, created new member services, or updated your governance structure and are seeing great results, I want to hear your story, and so do my listeners. I'd love to have you as a guest. Go to podcast.matrixgroup.net and apply to be on Associations Thrive. Now let's dive into this week's show. Today, I'm speaking with Eric Rossen, Executive Director of the National Association of School Psychologists, or NASP. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joanna. Happy to be here.
Eric, tell us about NASP.
Well, NASP is a professional association. We represent approximately 24,000 school psychologists. Our members are practitioners. They work in schools. Many of them are also faculty. We also have a lot of graduate students. We have retired professionals as well as related professionals, so people in similar or related fields. Our vision, or I should say our core purpose, is that we empower school psychologists to improve students' learning, behavior, and mental health. And certainly our vision more broadly is that all children and youth access the learning, behavior, and mental health support needed to thrive in school, at home, and throughout life.
Well, Eric, my son's school, I know, has school counselors, but I'm not sure that I've heard a counselor referred to as a psychologist. So talk to me about this distinction between a counselor and a psychologist. And do most schools have a psychologist as well as counselors?
Yeah, no, I love that question, Joanna, because it's a question that we get asked and actually is, I think, an indication that we continue to have work to do in our broad public awareness of the field. And we actually do have some initiatives focused on that right now. But school psychologists and school counselors are different professions. They have different training and there is overlap. Although, again, school psychologists are very different. School counselors and school psychologists do have some shared components of their training. School psychologists engage in a lot more focus on severe mental health problems, broad systems level interventions, kind of weaving the understanding of behavioral health, mental health, and learning, engaging in assessment. School psychologists do a lot of work in crisis preparedness and response. School counselors also have some training in that. They might have more of a slant towards training in career preparedness and social emotional counseling and things like that. What's really important for people to know is that schools that have both a school counselor and a school psychologist, they are force multipliers. When they work in tandem and work collaboratively and oftentimes with a school social worker, they can provide a range of services to schools that any one of those individuals couldn't provide on their own. So I've worked in schools. I came from the field as a school psychologist, and I often worked very collaboratively with our school counselor and our school social worker. As for your other question about does every school have a school psychologist, all students in public schools are entitled to access the services of a school psychologist. But because of shortages, and I know many groups talk about shortages, but there are severe shortages in school psychology too, so we're part of that club. Sometimes school psychologists are assigned to 2, 3, 4 different schools, or even 5.
Oh.
And they have to bounce around to different schools. And when I was practicing, I had to do that as well. So I had to be in this one school and I was there only 2 days a week, and another school 1 day a week, and another school another 2 days a week. So sometimes they're maybe a little less visible. There are some places where there's a school psychologist in every school, and they become obviously way more accessible to families and administrators and staff and students.
Eric, what kind of training does a school psychologist get?
To be a school psychologist, the entry-level credential is what we refer to as a specialist level degree. This is broadly defined as 60 graduate semester hours. It's usually a 3-year postgraduate degree. So it goes beyond a master's degree generally. That includes a full year internship experience, basically like a residency where you are in the field under direct supervision, but it is a curated set of experiences. So you are getting the full range of opportunities to exercise the skills you learned in your first 2 years of full-time graduate study.
Wow.
Some school psychologists do get a doctoral degree. So about 25% of school psychologists pursue a doctoral degree. And that's either sometimes a PhD, sometimes it's a PsyD, which is Doctor of Psychology. Sometimes it's a Doctor in Education, so an EDD. And then the other 75% have a specialist level degree.
And Eric, are your members K college?
For the most part, they are K to 12. But many of our members do provide services. I wouldn't say many, but some do at the college level. There's a larger portion that serves the birth through pre-K population and the early childhood population, because these are often students through the child find process. Early intervention obviously is an important and critical component of the comprehensive service delivery system and multi-tiered systems of support. And so many school psychologists are well equipped to apply those skills for early identification and support to families and students. So when they arrive in kindergarten or first grade, they have already started that early intervention, are prepared for school.
Wow. Well, we got a lot to talk about when it comes to NASP and how you support your members, but I want to turn to your journey. So you started out as a school psychologist and then became an association executive. So talk to us about this journey.
Yes, I reflect on my journey sometimes and how fortunate I've been. So I started college having no clue about school psychology. Like many people in school psychology, and this goes to our earlier conversation about making sure people know school psychology is such an exciting and fulfilling profession, but it is often hidden, right? Even from high school psychology textbooks and high school psychology classes, right? You hear about clinical psychologists and you think, oh yeah, someone's sitting on a couch in this individual therapy, and school psychology is less covered. So I'll go back even further. When I was in high school, I was working all sorts of jobs. I worked as a DJ for a company that did DJing for like weddings and bar mitzvahs. And I used to DJ like rock and roll bowling alleys.
Love that. Yeah.
I was a waiter. I was a busboy. I worked as a janitor in the elementary school that I actually attended. One summer in high school, I worked for temp agencies. When I really started to love what I was doing was when I became a camp counselor, and I loved working with children, just loved that environment, creating those relationships and seeing them grow and helping them through problems. And we just had a lot of fun. And I'd always just felt natural, just goofing around and having fun with kids and, my nieces and nephews and things like that. So when I got to college, I thought I was going to go into environmental science or architecture. And I fell asleep in the lectures. I was just not excited about it. Started taking some psychology courses and really loved it. On the side, I kept wanting to work with kids. I was doing Big Brother, Big Sister, and I was doing a mentor program. So I was mentoring some high school kids while I was in college.
The universe was telling you something.
The universe was telling me something. And even by junior year, I still had no idea.
You weren't listening to the signs.
Well, I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't know what it was called yet. So I actually went to a developmental psychology professor and that I really loved her class. And I just said, I like working with kids. I've been volunteering in the local high schools. how do I do that? How do I apply these principles of psychology in the school system? Because that's where kids are. And she said, have you heard of school psychology? I said, no. So I started taking education classes and really just saw it was a really nice fit. Went into school psychology, got my PhD from the University of Florida. And I, at the time, still didn't really know what I wanted to do within the field. I taught at the higher ed level. I did research. I was a practitioner in schools. I was a school psychologist. I also did some group private practice. And I liked it. But I always found myself really thinking around bigger picture. I started to get very interested in policy and broad national level issues. I was engaged in my association. I was a member of NASP starting in 2001. So as it turns out, as a member of NASP, I saw that there was a job posting for a director position, and I realized that their office was 3 miles from my house. So I thought I'd apply. And lo and behold, I got the job. This was back in 2010.
And was this the director of standards?
This was the Director of Professional Development and Standards. That was the title at the time. They took a chance on me. I was 31 years old, and I didn't have any experience in the association space other than being a member. But again, I was a member of the organization, held my national certification through them, and it was one of the most important decisions of my life, clearly. It sent me on a different trajectory. The interesting thing about coming from the industry itself and then going into the organization that you were a member of yourself, when I reflect, there's this like slow trajectory of what I now view as a almost complete career change for me. Even though I'm still in the same organization, I'm still in the same space of school psychology and still identify as a school psychologist. But right now, if I went into a school, I'd be way less talented as a practitioner than I was on year one because it's been so long. I haven't actually worked in a school in over 15 years.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, Eric, there are lots of association executives that don't have a background in the profession of their association. And that's actually pretty rare, I think, that the person at the top came from the profession. And some would say that's good and some would say that's less good, but that's your background. So what kind of perspective did it give you? And how does it help you with the board?
Well, I think there's a few things around that. One is, I guess the last part of my journey was as the executive director before me was retiring, she had suggested to me, and the executive director before her, the one who hired me, both had suggested that I might be a good fit for the executive director role, which obviously these were two people that I deeply admired, two people that I also deeply trusted that wanted the best for the organization and for me. And for them to see that both of those aligned was meaningful enough to me that I put a lot of thought into it. And I pursued my CAE. And I think pursuing my CAE really cemented myself as being committed to this sort of transition from being a school psychologist to being an association professional, an association executive. And so I think when we talk about someone coming from the industry and then taking on a CEO role, I might be a little different in that category in that I then made the commitment to become an association professional.
I see.
At least I see myself that way. And I still have much to learn, but I have really just committed fully to reading constantly in the association space. When I listen to podcasts, I listen to association podcasts now, including this one, Joanna. It is such a wonderful podcast. So if this is the first episode you're listening to, listen to all the others.
Thank you.
I listen to that more than psychology podcasts now.
Because your profession is now being an association executive.
Exactly. And that's what I was talking about, that like slow transition, a profession change. I'm an association professional now, even though I still identify as a school psychologist. What I think it provides me, for one, there's some street cred, right? So if I'm speaking to our members, if I'm speaking to our board, and we're talking about guild issues or professional issues that are affecting the profession, I can speak from a place of knowledge. I think being a nationally certified school psychologist, being a licensed psychologist in my state, having my PhD in school psychology, but also having my CAE from ASAE, it gives me a level of credibility, both as someone who understands effective governance and sound decision making and the legal aspects and downstream impacts for our association for any decisions that are made. But I can also speak to, at a very deep level, the hardships that our members are experiencing.
Well, it makes you uniquely qualified, but let me ask you a question. So you were Director of Professional Development and Standards for 14 years. You've been Executive Director for just over a year. So what's that like to move up to the Chief Staff Exec job in the same organization where maybe people who were your peers are now working under you? So what's that like?
So it's such a great question and one that I grappled with. And I actually was attending an ASAE event as I was preparing for my CAE and preparing to apply for the position. And we broke out in some small groups and I asked that question. I said, I'm looking to become the executive director of the association I'm in right now. And let me preface this by saying, when our previous executive director had announced her retirement, many of my peers and fellow staff, some of which I was very close with and some of which I was friendly with. I'd like to say I had positive relationships with everybody, but of course, there's a staff of 30. Some you're going to be more close with than others. Several of them came up to me separately and unsolicited saying, "Are you planning to apply? I think you should."
Very nice.
And so that also gave me confidence. So anyway, I was at this training and I asked the question, I said, what are some things that you should think about? And the response of one of the people there really, really shaped my approach. And she basically, I'll paraphrase, but she basically said, everyone knows you're closer with some people than others, and people will know who they are. And you have to be intentional to let the other staff know that you are going to be their executive director as much as everyone else is.
Good advice.
It was incredible advice. And I thought a lot about that, about what it would be like for someone that might say, okay, this new executive director, they are really good friends with these two people.
What's it going to be like? Yeah. Is it going to be a clique?
He has lunch every Tuesday with these two people, but not with me. So are they going to get what they want? And I'm not. And so I have really tried hard to make everyone on our staff feel that I care about them, I appreciate them, that I trust them, that they can trust me. I try to check in with people on a personal and professional basis, make sure they feel supported. I did the whole listening tour where I met with everyone individually and asked about their goals and how I can support them. And we do that on a regular basis. And some have come out and told me that they even noticed that. And so that was probably the best advice I had. But I think the other benefit it afforded me was, A, we had an incredibly strong staff already that I knew I could trust. These are people that are kind, they're thoughtful, they're hardworking, they're talented, they're skillful, they're committed, they're motivated. And so I also had to come in and exercise and express my trust. But, like any new person, even though they knew me, they also were not sure about what my leadership style would be like.
Right. Well, Eric, your leadership style wasn't entirely unknown because you were a director. But has your leadership style changed since becoming executive director?
Yes. In my director role, there was still a lot of doing, a lot of thinking and doing. And from my perspective, the role of an executive director or CEO is not to be the best person at every job in the room. I've really committed to the idea of a culture of innovation, the ability to take risks without fear of persecution if it doesn't go well, ensuring trust, ensuring that people know that my job is to enable them to do their job well. And there was a lot of conversations when I started that people would come to me with a lot of small things. Like, we're having a lunch and should we have a pizza with pepperoni or should it be half pepperoni? Or other questions about the placement of this thing on this page on our website. And someone, I remember in one meeting with 4 of us, we were kind of disagreeing. And someone said, well, it's your decision to me. And I said, no, it's not. The executive director's job is not to make every decision like this. That's why you're here.
Absolutely.
And I trust you implicitly. I said, if you ever want my opinion, ask for it and I will give it to you because I will almost always have an opinion. but it doesn't mean it's the right one, and it doesn't mean you always have to follow it. I encourage you to disagree with me. I trust you. You have expertise on this particular part of our organization the way that I don't. I have tried to infuse the idea that I am not the expert on everything. There are things in which I have expertise and things that I own for the organization, but those things I don't. And you don't even need to involve me because I trust you.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, like showing them that you're not in the land of doing anymore.
Right.
And that you trust them to do the work that they were hired to do.
100%. So it's really a lot about empowerment. It comes to the place now where people are sometimes asking for an opinion or advice rather than what do I do? And tell me what to do. Or I need to check in with you to make this decision. And I think there's a big difference.
Yeah.
And someone said something once, and it stuck with me too, right? That seeking advice is ultimately a sign of trust. Think about anyone you've ever asked advice from.
Yeah.
You're demonstrating trust to them, that I trust you to share a problem I'm having and not judge me for it. And I trust you enough that your ideas are going to be in my best interest. And I think about that now when someone asks for my advice. And I also think about it when I'm asking for advice.
Well said. Well, let's turn to NASP.
Yes.
It is National School Psychology Week, November 3rd through the 7th, 2025. What does this week represent? What's it all about?
Yeah. So, during the week, it's really about school psychologists across the country, across the United States, just celebrating the contributions of school psychologists, the important role they play in schools and communities. We've been doing it annually for a very long time. It's really an opportunity to recognize the work they do to help children and youth thrive in school and at home and in life. And each year we have a different theme, and we have an incredible committee of volunteer leaders that help generate our theme each year, and they generate a set of activities and resources that school psychologists can bring to their schools and invigorate excitement. What's really special about it is over time, we've seen other groups acknowledge it, whether it's fellow professionals, right? Like, we'll see state school counseling associations have a public acknowledgement of the important role of their partners, school psychologists. Or we've had governors regularly in different states decree that this is National School Psychology Week in the state, and they put out on their stamp and letterhead. And so really it's an opportunity to raise awareness about what we do, for our members to receive the kind of acknowledgement and appreciation that they deserve but often don't get. School psychologists are often fairly isolated. When I had 3 schools, there were no other school psychologists. We didn't have enough school psychologists to have more than one. So I don't see other school psychologists unless we have like a staff meeting every now and then.
Right.
And so, similar to the roles of CEOs, you are often isolated. Even if you spend a lot of time with other people, it is lonely in some regard. And so I think it was a similar thing for school psychologists, in that there are other partners that you work with. There are other adults that are all running in the same direction, teachers and administrators, and you're working on the same goals, but you are often the only school psychologist in the room. So National School Psychology Week is really an opportunity to elevate and celebrate.
Well, these weeks or these designations are often born of advocacy, and I know that advocacy is a big deal to NASP. So talk to me about the issues that you're advocating on. I bet you got a bunch.
We have so many. So like many national organizations, we focus very much on federal policy and federal law. There's often state level issues, and we will provide support to states if they ask for it. But for the most part, our attention is drawn to federal level policy. Our core purpose is to empower school psychologists to essentially do their jobs as best they can. But that can cross into areas of mental health and education. Some of the big issues, of course, are changes to the Department of Education. One thing, for example, was $1 billion in grant money to address the shortage, to improve retention and recruitment of school psychologists, create more programs, fund more faculty, help fund students in programs. It was earlier this year that the administration sent letters of non-continuation of those grants to, I think, over 50% of grantees. Sometimes these were programs where they had students that were a year into their program already, and now they're not sure if they can stay in the program or if the program can continue to fund them. We've heard of some faculty who said, my whole position was funded by this grant, so now I'm out of a job. And that completely disrupts the pipeline. We've done some research on the impact of the grants for the grantees, and we found that those grants led to significant positive outcomes, both in the number of students served and the number of new people that are training, the programs that are being developed. And pulling those funds obviously will disrupt that trend entirely. Now, there's some new grants that are being proposed for recompete, and so we are, trying to be supportive of that. Other things are around, public service loan forgiveness, but then there's advocacy around laws that impact students with disabilities or access to mental health services or general funding for mental health in schools. It is a wide range that we will engage in advocacy for, even things like, mental health screenings in schools and their role.
Eric, it's got to be a tough time for your members. There's cuts, there's school safety issues, there's perceived and real threats to education. How do you, as an association, support your members during a difficult time? Are you doing new and different things? It's almost like who's taking care of the mental health of the mental health specialist, of the psychologist?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And there's so many different ways to answer that. I mean, I think generally speaking, when we think about why associations exist, in many ways, it is one, to accomplish the things that people can't do on their own, and two, to establish a community and a network of like-minded professionals that can support one another to do their job better. And I think that is really a core responsibility for NASP, I think for any organization. I'll pull from a quote from my grandmother. I don't know if she came up with this quote, but she said, "Pain shared is halved and joy shared is doubled."
Love that.
And I think when you can share in your successes and share in your pain and solving that, it mitigates the pain and accentuates the joys. And so I think that networking is both important in the good times and the bad times, and leaning on one another as a community. Sometimes there's some validation that comes from just seeing other people like a post in our communities that says, I just experienced this. And someone says, I have that too. And it's really hard. So I think there are some things that community provides. But secondly, I think our members want to know that their dues are contributing to us speaking on their behalf, that we are talking about the issues that are relevant to the profession, that align with their own values and the values of the organization itself.
So it sounds like they want to feel like they're part of a bigger community of people who are all committed to the same things, but that they're part of an organization that's also advocating for them.
Yes.
And speaking of community, you've got a really important convention coming up in February 2026. And during the prep, you said, I'm expecting a really big convention next year. So tell us why you're expecting a really big convention. What are you doing to make that happen?
Well, for one, our convention is awesome. So why would anyone not want to come? I will say this. We have actually had a good trajectory of convention attendance post-COVID.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So as an example, we had our convention last year in Seattle in 2025, February of 2025. Our last time we were in Seattle was 2013. In 2013, we had 46 to 4,700 people come. I don't remember the exact number. We had almost 1,000 more people come in 2025.
Wow.
Some of our other smaller events, we're seeing a similar trend in uptick. Our next convention in February of 2026 is in Chicago. We have had our largest conventions ever in Chicago. And it's in February. And it's always been in February. So coming to Chicago in February is usually not on someone's bucket list.
Usually a little dicey.
Usually a little dicey, right? You're sludging through snowbanks, but we have just had the best, highest attendance there. Our last highest convention was over 6,500 people in Chicago in 2018.
Wow.
We had a record high of proposals for presentations. I think it's just going to be an incredible convention. Our lineup is timely. Our keynote speaker is Dr. Miguel Cardona, was the Secretary of Education under the last administration. And I think he'll be a really nice draw. And he's a wonderful speaker and a wonderful human being. So I'm just very much excited. We're engaging in other strategies, both for exhibitors, and we've improved our portal for exhibitors to join, as well as having more town halls and small group discussions. So sometimes these large conventions, we want to make the world a little smaller sometimes for people when we can.
Eric, there's something really interesting on the convention website, and it says that you're accepting applications for affiliated groups to host meetings during your meeting and use space.
Yes.
What's that? That sounds really interesting. It sounds like you're trying to create a bigger tent.
Absolutely. So I'd be curious if other organizations do this.
I've not seen it.
Yeah. So in the world of school psychology, there's a lot of other different associations that are completely separate, right? Separately incorporated, have their own bylaws, policies, tax returns, leadership, everything. That is both state associations. So we don't have they're not chapters. All the state associations in school psychology are separately incorporated. They are their own thing. But similarly, there are groups for faculty in school psychology only, or there are organizations for directors of school psych programs, or there are organizations that are focused on research in school psychology. There's also an international school psych association, which is separate.
So it's a big tent and you want them to come.
We want them to come. So sometimes they'll say, we'd like to have a reception for the people in our state, right? Or our leadership. And we invite them to request space and we'll give it to them.
And will you give it to them at no charge, or you charge them? Like, how does this work?
We will give them the space at no charge, but if they wanted a cash bar, they would be responsible for paying for the bartender and all that with the hotel usually.
But also presumably they're now bringing more of their members to attend your conference.
Absolutely.
Oh, interesting. Has this strategy worked?
I think it has. And I think it's mutually beneficial, right?
Right.
I don't want to necessarily come across as purely a business decision. It actually benefits everybody that we can all be together in the same space. And it's an opportunity where if you're an organization that really doesn't have much of a budget to meet, but everyone's going through some other means, right? So everyone's maybe being funded by their university to come, but this is our opportunity to be together. They're benefiting too.
Right.
And we want that. People talk about a conference and then they use the word convention. And I'm sure people have thought about this a lot. For me, the way I conceive it is a conference, its base word is to confer. That is focused on facts. You are conferring on details. You are doing clinics. You're getting a presentation. Convention, though, you're convening people.
Ah.
And so when I think about our convention, we are convening people. It is not just a dissemination of information, but it is a convening of the field to connect, to re-energize, to spend time together, to share in our pains and our joys.
I love this. Eric, it is 2025. Your website talks about the shortage of psychologists everywhere in the country. So to close this out, I'm going to ask you, why should someone become a school psychologist?
School psychology is an incredibly exciting and rewarding field. It is rich with opportunity to work with all sorts of children and youth or individuals or adolescents or even adults if you like working with adults. With the shortage, which something we don't necessarily want, but what that means that you have plenty of opportunity. The job market is incredibly strong for school psychology. But really, if you are interested in working with children and helping them and applying psychological principles to the learning environment, this is the field for you. It's also filled with wonderful people. When you're in education, you're spending time with people that are truly committed to the well-being of others. It's a really uniquely wonderful place to be in.
Eric, we'll have to have you back. this is your first year as executive director. I know there's a lot of great things that you're going to do, so let's have you back next year.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Joanna.
Thanks for listening to Associations Thrive. We're so glad to have you here. You know, my personal mission and the mission of my company, Matrix Group International, is to help associations and nonprofits increase membership, generate revenue, and thrive in the digital space. I want to hear stories of how your organization is thriving in today's challenging landscape. Please apply to be on my show by going to podcast.matrixgroup.net. By the way, do you need help with a digital initiative? Maybe it's a website redesign, a new membership database, or a hybrid meeting that you're planning. I'd love to connect with you. Please visit the Matrix Group website at matrixgroup.net. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of Associations Thrive. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating, post a comment, and share it with your colleagues and friends.